Thank you, Michael Paul. That was beautiful. So welcome to Father's Day. And I want to do things just a little bit different on this Father's Day. Instead of talking about the people who are fathers or even the personalities, what I want to do is I want to cover the divine father principle that's in all of us. And they say on Mother's Day, 82% of the people acknowledge that or come to church in the Christian movement. On Father's Day, it's only 71%. But, and we don't have all this touchy-feely, the love is all mothers and the nurturing is all mothers. But we do have a role. And speaking of role, I'd like to start it off with doing some role-playing. I'll role-play the Divine Father. Now, if I just had someone who would volunteer to be the Divine Mother. Oh, Anne-Marie, this should be fun.
Divine Father.
Oh, we need our stage props
yes,
now,
it's
too.
It's all about the props, right?
So, tell us about yourself, Divine Mother.
Well, I am all about the accepting, the receptive, the nurturing, the intuitive. So what do you have in mind for Father's Day?
Well, these drawings are actually the drawings of this 50-year-old building. They're actually for Reverend Michael. I'm playing the Divine Father. He's got a lot of work to do to refurbish this old building. But I do what Divine Fathers do. I push creation. I make things happen. We got some work to do. We've got consciousness to evolve. And it's my job to create the thoughts, create the new seeds, create the new visions, and push it again and again and again, no matter what happens. And if it doesn't work, I push it again and again. You know the drill.
Wow. I so admire your drive and determination. But what about the opportunities to sit back, to listen, to allow and observe, and to surrender? How does that fit into the evolution of consciousness?
The wisdom inside of me says, yes, you do need the balance, the yin and the yang. But sometimes it's overstated. So I know you have your role to play, and I have my role to play. But after all, it is Father's Day. So how about this? Maybe we can agree about this. Let's go grab our consciousness, work with our consciousness, create this highest vision that we have, and find a seed, and seed that vision, and maybe have a world that works for everyone. You want to do that?
Okay.
Oh, look, I found the seeds. Here's this nice large one for a large vision.
So nice of you to work so hard finding that seed, climbing the mountain, and doing all that work. Awesome.
Right. So I planted the seed, and as a good science minder, what do? I turn away, turn to my absolute faith, and I think the rest is sort of up to you.
Well, I will do my best to nurture this seed, to care for it, and to protect it.
And I'll do my best to have the faith and know it's done even as I speak.
And together, we have created something beautiful that we all can enjoy. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And who said spirituality couldn't be fun, huh? But I want to continue talking about that divine father principle, let me talk about, and that's the masculine side of the divine. And the masculine and feminine side is in each and every person. It doesn't have to do with whether you're born a man or a woman. We have tendencies. And we believe whatever gender that you are or you identify with, it's in all of us. But I want to talk about this masculine principle, and that's the principle that has to go beyond the physical, has to go beyond the reality, and has to boldly say, I'm going to change something. And I'm going to grab a thought. As I've told you many times, we grab a thought and we put that thought and grab that potentiality out there of something that's not formed yet and form it. And that's what the Father principle does. It absolutely knows it. And we just finished our class in studying the people, the men and women who put together this great movement in the 1800s. And the most well-talked, absolutely outstanding about talking about the Father principle happens to be a woman. Her name is Emma Curtis Hopkins. And so I went back and read and listened to the chapter that Emma Curtis Hopkins wrote called Denials of Science that probably gives more practitioners more problems than any other chapter. And it's an interesting chapter because what she says is this. We absolutely know that there's a good for us in the universe. And that good is our God. And all we have to do is name that good. But she says, unfortunately, we have a predominant thought throughout our culture that we're separated from that good. We're absolutely separated from that good. And what you want to do is look at those thoughts of separation, tear them down, burn them, deny them, because what you want to focus on is that which is good. And in fact, this stuff that you've been calling evil all these years is not evil. It's that concept of absence of good. And it says this, the only cause for evil is the idea of absence. That is all the evil there is. The belief of apartness from God and your good is the foundation of the word evil. The idea of absence of good had to be called something, so it was called evil. Remember, ideas always make conditions. Thus, the idea of absence has been known as evil. And she tells us this, and she tells us that's what we need to deny, that there's a disconnect. And she tells us that's the first denial of science, deny the existence of evil. And she tells us very much how to do that. And she says there's a very important person, many people throughout the ages that have done that. She says Moses saw that, and he saw the gloom and doom and the consciousnesses around him and the conditions around him. So what did he do? He said, let there be light. So he was focusing on the good. Because the way to in absence is a good thing. So we don't have to go chase it out of the room because it's nothingness anyway. It's a false idea. All we have to do is change our thinking. And Emma is very, very resolute about that. And she says, the first two denials is we have to deny the existence of evil. And she says another thing, she says we have to deny the existence of matter. Well, that's interesting because when we think about that, we're not denying the reality of matter. We're denying the intelligence of matter. And she goes on to tell us that all the great metaphysicians have denied this existence of evil, and that just reinforces that the matter comes into experience originating from spirit. The thought of spirit interacting with this universal law creates the world in which we live, which is both good for us and can be sobering for us if we make the wrong use of it. And she says that's why when a person has a tumor or something wrong with them, when we deny matter, the first thing we deny is the thing that is most real to us. And in Emma's opinion, that's bothering us is most real to us in our consciousness. So her philosophy is that which is not well with us goes away. And we're probably not even thinking about our heart beating and our lungs doing. And so that just stays with us. So it's not denying that matter physically doesn't exist. It's denying the intelligence of matter and denying the causalness of matter, because she always tells us that everything is created by spirit. She said that over and over again. And so she tells us about another very famous person that happens to be, we just got through teaching our class, or almost through, on the 10-week class on how we were founded in the 1800s. There's a British author named Thomas Carlyle, and he was fighting this like everyone else, like all the other philosophies. And he was just bugged by evil. He thought he couldn't get away from it. So Emma tells us he put this firm no. No, evil doesn't exist. You have no control over me. You are nothing. And the reason that was so important for us was Thomas Carlyle was one of the ones that Ralph Waldo Emerson communicated with. And he saw and visited with him, Emerson did, when he made his trip to Europe. And that's when the consciousness of Emerson started changing. And he started writing the things that we catch up on. So Emma's very strong about that all we have to do is break down this feeling that we don't have the good that we have. She tells us every day, go write down what things that you picture are your good. And then she says, I want you to reflect on them and see if there's anything that even resembles evil in those things. And of course, I'm sure her recommendation was if there were, you need to tear down those conditions, those thoughts, and begin again. The second metaphysical statement I want to make about the divine masculine is, Emma talks about this, but it's also in Don Miguel Ruiz's work, The Four Agreements. It's be impeccable with your word. And so my dad comes to mind, and he was never a learned philosopher or anything like that, but boy, he had some great insight he gave me. And he'd say to me, son, and whenever my dad called me son, it means I need to shut up and listen. And he said, son, if a man doesn't have his word in this life, he has nothing. And he was telling me a long time spiritual truth. Emma tells us through the word you express your creative power. It is through the word, your word, that you manifest everything. She shares with us the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word is God. And she tells us to make our word not just willy-willy and flippant. She says, make it backed by your strong faith. Absolutely speak your word with your authority, that you know exactly what you're talking about, and you know that that word will come to pass immediately. And that's what the word is all about. And she tells us it comes from your faith, it comes from the heart, from love instead of fear. And it comes from wisdom instead of knowledge, meaning it comes from the wisdom of spirit rather than the knowledge of the world. And to do this, part of this father principle has to go do what I was talking about in that earlier skit. Go do this over and over again. Create things. Try things. Find out what it is you want and use our teaching to go get those things. And I have a poem I want to share with you that sort of speaks to those. It's called The Race. It's by D. Groberg. It goes like this. Whenever I start to hang my head in front of failure's face, my downward fall is broken by the memory of a race. A children's race, young boys, young men, how I remember well. Excitement, sure, but also fear. It wasn't hard to tell. They all lined up so full of hope, each thought to win that race or tie for first. or if not that, at least take second place. Their parents watched from off the side, each cheering for their son, and each boy hoped to show his folks that he would be the one. The whistle blew, and off they flew like chariots of fire. To win, to be the hero there, was each young boy's desire. One boy in particular, whose dad was in the crowd, was running in the lead and thought, my dad will be so proud. But as he speeded down the field and crossed a shallow dip, the little boy who thought he'd win lost his step and slipped. Trying hard to catch himself, his arms flew every place. Amidst the laughter of the crowd, he fell on his face. As he fell, his hope fell too. He couldn't win it now. Humiliated, he just wished to disappear somehow. But as he fell, his dad stood up and showed his anxious face, which to the boy so clearly said, get up and win that race. He quickly rose, no damage done, behind a bit, that's all, and ran with all his mind and might to make up for his fall. So anxious to restore himself, to catch up and to win, his mind went faster than his legs. He slipped and fell again. He wished that he had quit before with only one disgrace. I'm hopeless as a runner now. I shouldn't try to race. But through the laughing crowd, he searched and found his father's face with a steady look that said again, get up and win that race. So he jumped up to try again, 10 yards behind the last. If I'm to gain those yards, he thought, I've got to run real fast. Exceeding everything he had, he regained 8, then 10. But trying hard to catch the lead, he slipped and fell again. Defeat, he lay there silently, a tear dropped from his eye. There's no sense running anymore. 3 strikes, I'm out. Why try? I've lost, so what's the use, he thought. I'll live with my disgrace. But then he thought about his dad, who soon he'd have to face. Get up, an echo sounded. You haven't lost it all. For all you have to do to win is rise each time you fall. Get up, the echo urged him. Get up and take your place. You were not meant for failure here. Get up and win that race. So up he rose to run once more, refusing to forfeit. And he resolved that win or lose, at least he wouldn't quit. So far behind the others now, the most he'd ever been. Still, he gave it all he had and ran like he could win. 3 times he'd fallen stumbling. 3 times he rose again. Too far behind to hope to win, he still ran to the end. They cheered another boy who crossed the line and won first. Head high and proud and happy, no falling, no disgrace. But when the fallen youngster crossed the line in last place, the crowd gave him a greater cheer for finishing the race. And even though he came in last with head bowed low and proud, you would have thought he'd won the race to listen to the crowd. And to his dad, he sadly said, I didn't do so well. To me, you won, his father said. You rose each time you fell. And now when things seem dark and bleak and difficult to face, the memory of that little boy helps me in my own race. For all of life is like that race with ups and downs and all. And all you have to do to win is rise each time you fall. And when depression and despair shout loudly in my face, another voice within me says, get up and win that race. And that's what we teach here. We teach their father principle is that divine father inside of you that says, go it again, try it again. Doesn't matter if you've done it 10 times or 50 times. Go inside. If it's yours to do, try it again. And sometimes we stop short of that. Sometimes we get into this thing called overwhelm. And sometimes we try it, and we're ready to step into this great manifestation that we've just created, and we're overwhelmed. It's too much bias for us. And that's the times when we have to listen to Emma again and say, turn away from the conditions. Get up and do it again. I mean, because I know that things happen in life, so I'll deal with things I can raise my hand on. How many of you have had a terrible relationship in life? You know, when you have a terrible relationship in life, do you say to yourself, I'll never have a great relationship? Hopefully not. Hopefully you say, I got a great slate. I'm the great child of God and I can create something. How many have had that terrible relationship turn into a nasty divorce? How many have lost a job, a career? You know, my biggest thing that I ever had to face was 30 years ago. I wanted to become a minister so much, and I couldn't relocate my job to go to ministerial school. But that was my race to run, and so I don't feel sorry about myself for it. I'm glad that I have this part of the masculine energy of the divine inside me that told me that I was never too old to do this. And we all have these issues. And think about it hard, and it may not be for you, but think about the principles that we have. And maybe the affirmations are working. Maybe the spiritual mind treatment is working. You just need to keep working it. Because to me, wherever we step forward, we see something awakening for us. So if you're down, if you fall down, you're down in the dirt, you're groveling in the dirt, you failed. This is the time where you're at the point of the greatest decision in your life. You can stay down. You can let it defeat you. You can let it break you. You can break down in that space. Or you can break through, dust yourself off, get back on the stage of life, and go do it again. And win that beautiful race for yourself. That's my challenge for you. God bless you and thank you.